Hi, and welcome to the FESPA Sustainability Spotlight video series. We understand, all of us, that sustainability is key to business success, and reducing negative social and environmental impacts are essential to our communities. We're providing information with the help of our guest speakers, thank you, Ali, which will support environmental best practice and help you make a bit of progress on your journey and at least consider the issues that are arising. So I'm pleased to say that in today's video, I'll be talking with Ali Khalili, who's CEO of Reboard. And instead of me introducing him any further, I'm going to ask Ali to tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, please.
Thank you, Graham, and thanks for having me. As mentioned, my name is Ali. I've been with Reboard since mid-2020, where I stepped in as the CEO, and my background is very much, of course, within the paper and pulp industry. I have more than a decade from kind of leading commercial roles in the paper industry, being in charge of more of a graphical paper side. I have an engineering background and all of that, but I think the important thing in this case is of course that the company as such, Reboard as such, which is a very kind of innovative Swedish small company with a vision to lead sustainability through our patented lightweight paper-based board, and that's where we think really we can create a difference. And with my background and from the paper world, together with the assets, I would say, that we have in Reboard, both as a team and as a product, we really want to show the world what paper can do. So that's really something I'm rather passionate about as well.
Perfect. And I know, having had quite a lot of interaction with your team, the kind of the holistic view is very much a part of your culture, and something that I think is really encouraging and represents the direction of travel that we all need to consider. So in our discussion today, we wanted to kind of get under the skin a bit of what you understand from Reboard's point of view decarbonisation means. So I suppose to kick off our conversation, I'd like to know what your general view is on decarbonisation, whether it's something that we should focus on, and if so, why?
Well, I mean, I would say, starting from the basics, I think it's important to understand that a little bit of a buzzword of decarbonization, simply means reducing carbon emissions. So I would say this rather fancy and to some, of course, elaborate term is just a means to express, that we need to decrease our carbon footprint, either as an individual in that sense or as an organization or a company. I think simplifying it just as a start is rather important, as it's not more complicated than that. It is simply about reducing footprints and emissions. And of course, despite the risk that decarbonization as a term tends to be, hijacked by what I would call greenwashers, of course, we as a collective have to reduce our footprint and emissions, where of course carbon right now is the number one thing. I mean, just during the first quarter this year, we've seen a number of reports from left and right on regarding the net zero emission, the carbon emission goals getting more and more and further out of reach, which simply means that we're heading in the wrong direction. So of course I would say reducing our footprint and emissions, both as humans, but also as organizations, is something we all should focus on, but also not overcomplicating it. It is about just reducing. Every single step you take helps the journey in that sense.
And in many ways, it's about just thinking through in a little more detail what's going on. And I suppose one of the nice wins, when you consider the impact of energy in manufacturing and its significant contribution to operational cost, is by having an energy saving audit of your factory floor, of looking at your processes and seeing whether there are different ways you can either bring energy in through renewables or whether the direct engineering processes in terms of how you make a product can reduce the energy. Of course, the joy is that reduces your emissions and reduces your operating costs, which is key for everyone. So
definitely. I mean, I think that's a good, I mean, energy is, I would say, the by far simplest starting point. Just as you say, that's there are of course initiatives and measures that come at a cost, but many of reducing your emissions, reducing carbon footprint measures do also result in a reduced or at least improved cost situation, where energy is the clearest one. I think, and just as you say, I mean, the energy mapping as a basic thing is a very hands-on, rather simple thing to do. We just actually had another team over here at our site during the beginning of this year doing I think it's a second or third energy mapping to simply, as you say, evaluate, are we using the energy in an efficient way? Where can we make savings? And so on. So kind of constantly being aware of what is it that you're doing, and as you pointed out, thinking one step ahead of time, not just taking these shortcuts, but just think a little bit through what is it we are doing and what is it we want to accomplish. It just starts there.
Yeah, I'm reminded of something that a friend of mine who's an environmental consultant says is the best kilowatt hour is the one you don't use, and of course it's true. And I think things like if people just Google energy saving audits, there's like the treasure hunts from Energy Star have been used across automotive, across all sorts of manufacturing sectors. And in fact, many years ago, I was a part of a project to replace infrared energy source for curing ink in a printing facility in the electronics industry to moving it to ultraviolet curing. And it was a transformation of the engineering of the whole production line, and we reduced the energy consumption by about 80%.
Yeah.
And it ended up saving us a ton of cash, giving us an award for energy saving. And so it's actually a very interesting process. And I think for the people in our businesses who are looking at it, it's getting people bought in at every level of the organization, isn't it? It's something that, and it's great having a CEO with us today, because it starts from the top of the top. And if you have that culture developing, then it facilitates the process right the way through, cascading through the business. So I think, interestingly, when you look at the contribution towards the scale of the problem that comes from printed products, we're a big industrial classification of a very wide range of products. But actually, if you compare us to agriculture, fashion, construction, steelmaking, our role in the scale of the problem is fairly minor. But that doesn't, in my view, shouldn't prevent us from reaching forward and doing the best we can. Because I think, as you said, as individuals, we have responsibility. We are taking responsibility, and in our organizations, the payoff for addressing emissions reduction, decarbonisation, is that we get better buy-in from our staff, and especially if we've got younger people working in our businesses, these become kind of critical cultural things. So what's your view on the industry from that point of view? Where are you at?
No, I mean, you touched upon a good something in this comparison. Despite maybe our industry not being having the biggest footprint or the biggest polluters, I would say that of course, in addition to from a pure human perspective, also from a business perspective, this decarbonization is or reducing your emissions and is an absolute must for our industry. I mean, you could challenge ourselves, including me, a little bit by asking, is our industry really quintessential? Is our industry crucial for mankind to allow it to not reduce our footprint? I think that's one part of it, because I think on a more practical note, our industry needs to stay ahead and awake, because it's not only a matter of time. I mean, it's only a matter of time before, we see more and more legislations, more and more constraints on what materials to use, what energy to use, how to use it, and where to use it. So I think from that perspective, despite us not being, under the focus lamp in that sense at the moment, I think it is important for us as an industry to take measures and actions already now, as it is, in the long run. I honestly believe it will be a matter of survival for individual companies, but also our industry as a whole. I mean, already today, it's a challenging thing to say, but if you would have legislators attending any expo show, the days after the expo show, looking at the amount of waste and what the type of waste, for example, and how is that being recycled? Is it being recycled? Is it being reused or not? I think if that's really something. I mean, if you can yourself walk around after an expo, whichever expo, on a global scale, you see the amount of direct footprint we cause as an industry. I think we need to really be awake and one step ahead of legislators, both from a human perspective to do for a greater cause, if I put it that way, but also as an industry to simply survive in the long run. I think from the sustainability approach being a nice thing to have in your pocket, I think it's going to be more and more essential as a company to survive in the long run. It's not going to be a nice to have thing. It's going to be a make or break thing rather.
And I think, I spoke earlier about the idea of younger members of our workforce and more people having this as a kind of these fundamental considerations within business culture to attract talent. And I think that with your point about products and are they essential, I think there's part of life cycle analysis, part of systems redesign is business owners do have to think about of the products that they produce. And let's face it, many of the manufacturers, printing companies within our space are producing dozens of different applications of printed products, but not all of them are going to find favor in the future.
No.
I think there's a kind of a sifting, a review process necessary to say, right, what is an appropriate use of material for the durability requirement of the end user, and in the case of the sort of exhibition space, to name but one, retail point of sale. We could go on, but there's absolutely the case, and you need to choose your materials so that they represent fitness for purpose and that they're justifiable in the end use. And I think interestingly for us, we've had one of the very popular features at our shows for FESPA's members from its international base to come to is the Club FESPA online, Club FESPA lounge area. When people come to that, we want them to be greeted in a hospitality space that is functionally suitable and feels like a destination. But we've taken a different view from previous years where that lounge has become, the lounge has been important to what's the lounge made of. And we've been very fortunate to have your support with our sustainability spotlight stand last year, which allowed us to reduce emissions by 90% compared to using the traditional stand build materials that we've been used to using. And now we're mobilizing that across to the Club FESPA lounge, and we'll see a comfortable, suitable set of environments, from bar to meeting areas to casual seating, that are all built around this material that at the end of the show can be recycled straightforwardly and not end up in landfill. And I think that's a good example of how just thinking through the suitability of a material for an end use is
absolutely. I mean, I think you kind of really put your finger at it. I think it is really about appropriateness and about fit for purpose. And I think that's where on a global scale, we as as a collective, both as humans, as an industry, have kind of gone a little bit too much in the wrong direction, and that's where we need to kind of pull back. And that's also usually the easiest thing to do. The fit for purposeness is this the right material, or is this the right energy for that, usage, or whatever it is. That's taking that second round of thinking around your consumption, if I put it that way. So I think that's really a key issue. And I think there, coming back to our industry, there we as an industry have much more power than I think we have. Because many of the printers, the fabricators, the producers in our industry are also trusted consultants, trusted, partners to the brand owners at the end, or to whoever that's asking for that stand or that POP or that retail application. So I think there we can, as an industry, also support the customers in making more sustainable choices. And again, back to your comment, the fit for purpose choices, rather than just going with, again, taking the shortcuts and do the things we've always been doing.
Yeah. So if we consider the Scope 3 emissions, I know because I have a direct experience of carbon footprinting and, looking at Scope 1, 2, 3 emissions benchmarking. I think the important thing is to start with some measurements, isn't it? Is that you kind of have to look at your business and find out where the hotspots are, find out where the principal opportunities are to reduce emissions. And the great thing is as we talked earlier about energy, the likelihood is there's an investment in the process, identifying the savings to be made, but critically there are economic benefits attached definitely to those savings. I'm interested from your point of view, working with the customer base that you have, given that we're in an environment where we've got, we are in a position of inflationary economics, of a very high cost of energy. We have a lot of challenges to meet in business, which in some cases might reduce people's interest in reducing emissions, because they're too kind of, well, I need to just get through the year. What are you seeing through your customers in terms of taking the advantage of supply chain Scope 3 emissions reductions counter the other pressures that are existing in their operations?
Yeah, I would say it's a mixed picture. We're also a global supplier. We supply some 40 countries globally. So this is also very different in different parts of the world, where legislation has a part of it, but also culture and background and where everything comes from. And I think, I say, if I split up our customers in that sense in two sets, the customers that are closest to us in the value chain are mainly printers, converters, producers, fabricators of different kind. And here we see definitely an increasing interest in looking at Scope 3, to simply reduce emissions, because I think the awareness of a financial benefit at the end of the line is there as well. I've heard, for example, of many examples where they start off in a small scale, with, for example, student projects. You have a university close by, there's an engineering education connected to energy management or something like that. So someone makes their master thesis, or someone runs a project, a team of students, just as a starting point in that sense. So I think definitely that there's a increasing interest, and then most business owners, of course, understand that you need to start with your own. What can we do within our house in that sense? So I think there we see an increasing interest, although there's still a far way to go, I would say. Looking at, if you divide it globally, Europe, and especially in Northern Europe, it is a driving factor connected to costs in many cases, where people are making investments, again, back to energy, in solar panels, windmills, and all kinds of, and in many cases bigger investments as well, but they see a return on investment further ahead. I think that's a reality that's very quickly this year come to continental Europe as well, for example, looking at the dependency on fossil fuels, gas, and so on, and the war and all that. So I think there's a lot of things happening as well, but we're far from there yet.
And I wonder whether some of this, some of the challenges, we're kind of getting in some of the challenges people face with balancing progress, the normal timelines for investment. For example, we know that if you change all of your plant lighting system to LED, if you implement solar onto, if you own your site and you can implement solar onto the roof as a partial contributor to your energy mix, these investments tend to be on longer timelines. There's payback, but the ROI is generally quite long. It's like, frequently a kind of a 10-year sort of, rather than, I think many of us are used to the sort of 3 to 5 year.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that represents a bit of an upfront challenge. But,
definitely.
But maybe the point is that we look at this not just as a point of view of the energy saving, but also how our customers regard us.
Definitely.
And if we are able to say to our customers that we are, that we're reducing our reliance on fossil fuel, and I think in many cases that I've observed, people are maybe getting to the sort of 25-30% in their energy mix from renewables, from their own sources, ground heat, solar, and just reduced energy consumption. In fact, I was recently in a plant in northern Denmark, and they lowered the illumination in their offices by about 10%. So over in terms of benefit, financial benefit, it's actually very small on its own. But what they did through their energy treasure hunts is they looked at every opportunity. Sensors for lighting in the bathrooms. Just if you're not in the bathroom, then it doesn't need to be a light on. And the collective benefit has actually been significant. And again, they have a very strong marketing team who then can demonstrate to their customers that they're walking the walk, not just talk. And to your point about greenwash, it's wearing a bit thin, isn't it? We have to be able to demonstrate what we're doing and how it addresses the needs of a changing world. And I do wonder on the area of economic benefit. It seems to me that when you're starting to look at your supply chain and considering the societal impact of what you do, of the way your employees are regarded, and the kind of the workplace culture, but also if you're buying product importing from other locations, suddenly having the advantage of using organizations like SEDEX to know how those workers are being treated, a bit more due diligence is becoming a much more of a necessity than has been previously. And then the environmental, looking for pollution has been, let's face it, pollution has essentially been free for decades. We haven't had to think about the consequence of our activity, and this increasing mobilization of the principle of the polluter pays is coming more and more into operations. And in the end, consumers, I think, will have to pay higher prices for products, because if the polluter pays principle is implemented, there will be a cost attached.
Definitely. No, I think that going back to the investment discussion you mentioned, absolutely, many of these investments are long term, but that's where, let's say, the economics of it affects things, because if you look at the cost situation today versus 5 years ago, the payment, the return on investment or the payback time is shorter because things are, the energy, as a good example, is more expensive.
Yes.
We did it, for example, a mapping a couple of years ago regarding changing to LED lights. I think it was 4 years ago, where the payback time was much longer, and then when we pushed the button this year, the payback time actually was short, not half, but I think 2/3 or something like that, because of the energy cost suddenly. So the same amount of saving in kilowatts, as a simple example, but because of the kilowatts being more expensive today compared to 4 years ago, the payback time is much shorter. Yeah, exactly. So that's of course, that's one of the positive things, and you start getting pushed on by the economics and the financials as well. And I think, just as you pointed out, I think the end customers and main stakeholders, being brand owners and so on, big or small, they are without a doubt very conscious about these things, and put more and more focus in different ways on reducing emissions from whatever it is that buy. So I think that again come back to our industry, on a daily basis, on an hourly basis, dealing with brand owners, we need to have that preparedness. And I think that's, coming back to discussion around survival of the company and industry. I think that's really, in the long term, we see it very often where big brand owners do pick the more sustainable options, both when it comes to materials, when it comes to printers, when it comes to so we see that very, very a clear trend at the end line with the stakeholders being the brand owners, where sustainable choices are made in a much more almost black and white way in that sense.
Yeah, I think there's the next kind of iteration, or the evolving landscape is going to be one where we're just seeing carbon emissions calculators finally being integrated into management information systems, in cost and estimating packaging. And that to me is really interesting, because I think if you can go to your client, and I know of many cases where estimators will say, right, here's the standard option, and here's the more environmentally responsible option, and they look at it, but they're no longer looking just at the cost. They're looking at the emissions and the scope 3 emissions reduction. If you're working on large campaigns, that's a significant influencer in that people are prepared to pay some money towards. I think we're still at a point where it's difficult to add value, but that those things are systemically likely to get easier if you've got the ability to carbon to quote the carbon embodied in your products. Because
and with the growth of the more sustainable or responsible options, of course the cost of those options will also go down. You're back to just basic economics. That's that's inevitable. So I think the more of sustainable options, and whether it be materials or energy, whatever we use, the cheaper they will become. And I think that's what we start to see to some extent as well. But I agree with you that there's a bunch of different tools which very clearly show what kind of impact does this campaign or product stand or whatever it is have, and that's a part of in a very clear, simple manner, showing your customers here are two choices, both helping them but also pushing them in the right direction.
Yeah, encouraging.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so we've got into a few of the things, but in terms of reduce, reuse, recycle, the thinking is that they should that also denotes the priority order. So reduction comes first. So making more efficient use of materials, consideration for whether you can go from the most problematic thing is multi-layered laminated materials that are difficult to separate at end of life. And I think in many of the grades in sort of paper fiber-based materials, one of the attractive qualities is that you are getting back to a more simple construction. that can be reprocessed. And reuse, maybe examples of reuse are building like in point of sale, for example, building a structure that you can then rewrap.
Exactly.
Wrap. And then recycling, one of the joys of paper-based materials is that we actually, unlike plastics, we have a reasonably mature, capable recycling in many countries. What's your view on reduce, reuse, recycle as a set of challenges?
No, I mean, I think it's, without a doubt, it's the definitely right step to go. And I think there again, coming back to our industry, that's where we can make a difference. We can both think one step further and around what's the customer's real use, what's the real need and application, and where, how, and will the product be used. So adapting the need again to rather than to purposefulness rather than taking the shortcuts. And they're, to some extent also challenging the customer on their choices. As you say, encouraging them, helping them to choose a more sustainable option. And I think at least looking at our material, which is the part I have most knowledge about, eco designs or conscious designs, how you as a producer, as a converter, printer, design that solution for your customer. It really starts there, because you adapt then the design to the application rather than just using something standard, and then coming back to, is it going to be reused? Is it going to be, will there be possibility to recycle it? How do I design things so it can be easily recycled? We have a lot of examples of close partner to ours finding different ways of creating this reduce, reuse, recycle possibilities. Of course, with our material, the recyclability is inherent. So focus is more on how do we create, build, design, construct things so they can be as efficient as possible, with as low material usage, for example, or energy usage, and also being reused. I think that's, again, going back to, you mentioned the life cycle analysis, that's really how you can look at the lifespan of a product being produced, and how many times is going to be reused in that sense. So if you get the reuse part correctly, you very quickly reduce the emissions or the footprint from the product over life cycle. And again, I think that's really, from a global general perspective, we as an industry have probably far better possibilities to help, support, encourage our customers in a better direction compared to many other industries. So I think there we definitely have a lot of possibilities if we want to take those steps. If we want to offer our customers, and I think that's really a huge possibility. And again, coming back to a simple step, it doesn't have to be that grandiose and fancy. That's a very simple means of thinking reduce, reuse, recycle in your whole process in that sense.
Yeah, cool. I think places that I would visit to sort of look further at this, the topic of LCA and stuff, is Ellen MacArthur Foundation have a free piece of software called Circulytics, which is very interesting and gives you a chance to consider whether, I think lots of people talk about circular economy. Frankly, to me, it's a bit of an oversimplification. It's a nice idea that, product A ends up back at product A again. And I think it's rarely like that. I think it's more product A becomes cyclical and ends up as product B.
Exactly.
It's just, it doesn't matter as long as we're retaining material within different manufactured products, isn't it?
Yeah.
Waste becomes valued feedstock for another purpose, is still a win.
Yeah.
But also there's a website, I think it's called the Donut, and it has nothing to do with the edible variety, but it's part of Kate Rayworth's Donut Economics book, and it's very interesting because it has lots of live case studies of how circular thinking is being applied either city level, business level, but it's a kind of a rich seam. Within Reboard, do you have some resources that you can help customers to explore LCA and stuff like that?
Absolutely. I mean, both, for our materials, we have LCAs in place, and we're actually right now on our level of taking that up a notch. I'll have to come back with that, but so we have those resources for our materials, of course, and there's definitely a network of highly competent people we work with globally, both in connection to LCAs and similar, but also to when it comes to reduce, reuse, recycle, that principle of thinking. So I would say there's and nowadays that's resources in that areas are not a uniqueness. There's plenty of those. So it's, again, you kind of come back to awareness and a sense of urgency. The challenge is not that there's a lack of options or lack of alternatives or lack of support and help. I mean, in the Nordic countries, as a good example, there's even that kind of support on circularity and life cycle analysis and evaluations from certain governmental bodies. So and I think that's also from a European Union level being gradually implemented in different countries. So we have part of those issues ourselves, of course, for more what the part we know about, which is mainly paper and our type of products. But there's a lot of those assets and possibilities. So I think, again, it's a matter of taking those steps. Wanting to evaluate, assess yourself as a also first step, wanting to map. Okay, how good or bad are we? Just like in energy mapping we were talking about.
Yeah. Brilliant. I've really enjoyed our discussion today. I think, in every one of these sessions, I could put the kettle on and have a cup of tea and carry on for a good deal longer. So, Ali, thank you so much for your time today, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing you in Munich. You can look at the work that ATC have done with your material in producing the sustainability spotlight and lounges. Just a note on that, we'll also be featuring on the sustainability spotlight stand a range of innovative materials for textile and graphic applications. We're going to have some really interesting things, that are emerging. There's an awful lot happening in material design. So come and see us. If you're not fortunate enough to be able to come to the show, then I'd suggest a visit to FESPA.com, where you'll find a whole host of videos, podcasts, and blogs around sustainability topic. That we can all focus around to help us on the reduce, reuse, recycle mantra. So that leaves me to say thank you very much indeed for joining us and watching today, and Ali, for you to participate again. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.